Hello, dear Linda McMahon, Maria Bartiromo, and Fox News. At and next to the Wethersfield Board of Education building, before it was there, and since its inception, ones with the name DeMorrow, like a John DeMorrow. They have roles with Old Wethersfield and with a Ruth involved with retired mayors from Wethersfield and deceased ones, and involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones and sexual and medical offenders of kids. Also, cultural and religious differences, rackets roles, like pretending things are debatable that are not, and getting away with it, where and how they've been planting collusion slash S with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, the news, and the courts, and the police forms, and their sources, and people tied to mayors, politicians of other nations, putting the same sequence shifts in. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others in Rocky Hill. These are also names at and next to the spots next to Hartford Hospital, a Maiano family involved with the Jonathan Maiano, increasingly people tied to a Jonathan Maiano, involved with sequence shifts, and with people in intelligence families near me involved with ongoing predicate acts of Wethersfield police, switching and forging names with other police departments and with their sources. Phil Kalol is further involved with the Joshua Schumack, with Whiting Forensics, with digital crimes and changing digital evidences through time. A whole bunch of probation officers involved with drugs and sexual and medical crimes of kids, medicines crimes, while tactically delusions raw. There is a Miss Riley, I didn't respond to it. She made repeated sexual things about the intimate ties of, and as a girl who reportedly lives next to me. I never met her, and her family is involved with that. Increasingly, with people with educators of Array Cololo involved with the intelligence community, and their roles with people with the house he moved into, and conjunctions to it, with their syntax, with the officers switching and forging names, with the child abusers, leaders of kids. One time I had to get real violent verbally and force people to call the police without telling them why. I told them I'm going to stay that way until they call the police. The police got here. Then I didn't even speak with them. They put me in fake conversations with people who were recorded and increasingly involved with a Detective Dillon, who non-verbally confirmed, also with a former director of the FBI in a 2006 district court case. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed non-verbally. He's involved with Thaddeus Grabowski next to Fox Connecticut News with a whole bunch of people who has roles with predicate acts into the databases at the campuses I went. And it's relative when they're making subject treatments like special needs, etc. Those people and the differences of their employment and their family members were our collusion slash expedite, gang theft, fraud, slanders. Interbranch have been refusing to get on paper because they've been reliant upon things in databases they know their families had collusions with. Their difference was used at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. John DeMorrow has some rape confessions, even if he made that up. It's still involved with his roles with my teachers at Central Connecticut State University, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Him with FBI too, and with courts, family members, and intimate ties involved with Central Connecticut State University in Britain, Connecticut. Increasingly with a John DeMorrow, Joe DeMorrow, and people tied to them with sexual circles, with all along Church Street and Old Westfield, and people with corners of the streets there, involved putting fake things in databases, including at medical campuses. And these are people collusions at and next to the state corrections offices, at and next to the state judicial branch offices, and at and next Whiting Forensics at the same time. Collusions with names from Sandy Hook campuses, including a prison campus there, involved with child abusers, leaders of the kids before they were in the prison, and with other natures of organized crimes, and roles with the body don't be spot and names next to the body don't be spot of a serial killer, involved with Eric Burgess confessions and requests for help regarding FBI Director Robert Luskin. I didn't know his name at the time, as one of the ones involved with the Dean Judd and various courts, family members, and their intimate ties. Like Harper Court has intimate ties roles with Eric Burgess, involved also with a Joseph Dennis, and a whole bunch of people related to the name Scalora. Per people that say the Colo and DeMauro said that they're related to the name Scalora. A DeMauro recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed people with the name Scalora involved with them with wire crimes in my area and home break-ins. Also with Heather Hansen, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed she had collusions with that with the DeMauros and other people involved with another house too that she had roles with. And she told me that after the person was dead and their house was cleared out. And I wrote a thing on, I put on the rug there, and no one ever asked me about that. There are proofs that the investigators about that couldn't afford to have me questions about that, because those are the same ones who were putting predicate acts in the databases I went to. I never knew who that were trying to make a fake exception of me knowing Heather Hansen, and she was making confessions, demonstrations about her roles, confirmations of her roles with a whole bunch of people or her boyfriends, plural, involved with predicate acts between. I never had a camp class with her in my life. Mr. Neville made a fake exception, and it makes it sound like I'm mad at Heather Hansen. I'm not mad at her. I don't know her. I can't get her or anyone onto paper anyway. That proves if you get her on, I just need the police chief on paper too. The police chief in Toronto, and one or more years ago, involved with 80 Churchill Drive. Further with the people with a Bob Chase and a Joshua Julian planting predicate acts with them, with whiting forensics through time, and with people with the child abusers, leaders of kids, who have abuses of the kids of the leaders of the kids. There's a Mr. Murphy who has a daughter. I never had a verbal conversation with her. She was influenced to be around me so they could pretend other. There's a Kevin Harris involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, drugs and medicines crimes with kids, with judges and prosecutors and their family members, and foreign and domestic medical families, overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Has something to do with their roles with the intelligence families next to Central Connecticut State University, the sides of it, and next to Trinity College, the sides of it. The same ones who have collusions between and connections between themselves. They were exploited by the ones involved with wire crimes, the Wethersfield Police Departments, plural, and the Wethersfield Police switching names and making confessions over the phone too, because then they change and fake what's digitally recorded and phone conversations. These are also people who attach me to fake conversations with the police as a kid and then as an adult, sickly distinctly. I wasn't even down there as a kid. As an adult, I was there. I didn't have one word of conversation ever in my life with the older Mendez, police brother, who's one of the ones on Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, and the buildings next to it, involved criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, various natures of organized crimes, and uses of their badge where they don't have the right to use it. Also, group with New Britain Superior Court has people, and Hartford Courts has people involved with predicate acts with them identity, theft, fraud, slanders. And the news at the same time, they're interbranch refusing to get on paper with them since I was a kid. In other words, and then so they have victims advocates involved with them, and with narrative, with collusions with all natures of crime scenes, and people at the state capitol who have collusions with other countries, and a hyperforeign is recorded involved originally and still. Like, for example, how the northern colonies and southern colonies had roles sickly distinctly with slavery, and they were complete possessions of other countries. But they also had self-value collusions with internationally monitored conversations, northern colonies and southern colonies, that were timed collusions with the overt criminal enterprises, terrorists, and the insidiousness of the logic, fact-sheet nature, style, syntax of people A through Z. Otherwise, that body was sentenced through their own. And that was adapted to, including if it was the phenomenon of a country or of a whole colony. And that was adapted to. This is differences racketeering worse than war crimes. So we have problems at the campuses because there are and have been differences racketeering worse than war crimes roles. Increasingly, Connecticut's roles with Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University has roles with Saudi Arabia through time, with people involved with the state education department since before its inception, with people with the name Demoro and increasingly involved with criminal enterprises and sexual and medical offenders of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders. He also made confessions to me about how he had roles with how like they had a cigarette policy that changed, where the kids used to smoke at the campuses. John Demoro, and I never went with him in the car to go to the side of Caldor, which is now Walmart, in Rocky Hill off Town Line Drive. Increasingly, families with the intelligence community tied to Town Line Drive and to Town Lines. They have collusions with predicate acts with facts with the news and with the interbranch at the same time with a whole bunch of other countries of work criminal enterprises and private ones. There's a lot more too. Everyone's speaking through other where they don't have the right to. They already used all natures of words, criminally foreign impulse, tactically delusions. I'm not even a lawyer. It's recorded. Lawyers, all sides of criminal civil case, Trantola, for example. They're involved with interbranch refusing to identify themselves. They were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Tactically delusions wrought. Changing, I barely had words with them at all. With the person, he called me back and I barely had words with all of them. He says I made a conspiracy theory. That's one of the things that enabled the principal child abuser to get away with that. And others with more natures of organized crime rolls with that. There's a Michelle Sanquest who's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with, when I was a kid and then when I was an adult with a former mayor of Gold and with intelligence families near me involved with child abusers of kids and involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with her, also with the news, WTNH, and FBI. FBI Director Robert Lusk and his co-defendants and their family members are increasingly a part of the backstory, where and how they won't get on paper, and I have to explain that. So we're gonna examine their roles intercity. A whole bunch of people with the Marines still. I don't know that Marine from Newington. He's pretending fake passions and emotions still with others, tied to a Ray Colal with his spots and people tied to him in Glastonbury and Newington and Wethersfield involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with the police departments. People with the name O'Brien and D. Simone involved with Newington Police Department, Sandy Hook. You know, these are people with the Department of Corrections and their roles with the various, drugs and things undercover, where they've been digital and wire crimes. They're bringing their roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases through time. They're putting fake predicate acts into records consciously, even if it was made up. Ray Clow said that he was and people told me, hey, he confirmed it, that he had put me mentioned in a civil case he had about an earring he sued some girl from Middlesex for. That might have just been them trying to establish undercover or whatever. A whole bunch of people from Middlesex Community College have roles with state police forms and FBI and CIA making confessions, having made confessions on and confirmations and demonstrations on Facebook too, regarding the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso with Enzo Fienza and his confessions about it next to his family's spots associated with them with people in Two Route Highway in Wethersfield and where it runs into Hangdog Lane and people associated with next to the state judicial branch offices with him and the World Trade Center attack as people that have been covering up live progressions. I never even saw him as a kid. I never knew him as a kid. The kid that lived across the street from his house, I never had a conversation with him in my life. I had one sentence. I didn't even respond to the sentence he had. I didn't even have a sentence of conversation with him. I might have, if responded. If I did, it was one sentence of conversation with him. I didn't think I said anything. He has roles with increasingly with state police, South Sevilla, and with FBI, and with courts, with intelligence families on Two Route Highway, and with their intimate ties, also with probate court judges on their families and other families who have roles with criminal enterprises and private ones, and putting fake things in databases and collusions with that. 2 speech class teachers I have teachers and kids increasingly with Washington, D.C., involved with them with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, has their roles all along Route 175 and conjunctions to it. From the old Wethersfield locations, Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. And still they have self-valid rules, changing what our founders communicated about why and how George Washington had to come there with with James Madison's plan and counter-extort, force them to help the revolution at 13 key, I don't want to say 13, at key locations to make what unfolded as a unity force to be by James Madison, the founders behind him and his plan. Then George Washington agreed to help that. George Washington alone, he had no means to force other founders and to fight against England and the internationally monitored conversations and laws that were the possession of George Washington and everyone sickly distinctly, but sickly non-distinctly, to measure and maintain too how sickly non-distinctly was left out by everyone, as styles needed to pretend they don't realize, being and having been used remotely, speaking anyway, for the name as the names of the people of sciences increasingly from off those locations, hyper additional collusion /s, tactically delusions raw. So there are people with the name Leahy increasingly involved with sequence shifts and planting evidences and predicate acts at and between campuses with other names. Fake conversations with me too. Their worlds forging names too. They're proofs that they forged the name of a Dr. Shamsi Ali, who I never communicated with either. He confessed that over the phone. I found that name in the phone book. I can't get one person to help me and respond to me since before the World Trade Center attack. Increasingly, the names I did speak with are tied to ones who faked conversations with me. Increasingly, people on Church Street in Old Wethersfield have roles with all sides of cases, the state judicial branches and offices and the corrections offices with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and retired mayors from Wethersfield involved with the roofs next to the Wethersfield judicial branch offices, also involved with them with Saudi leaders and kids, and Afghan leaders and kids through time, with the John DeMoro and overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and the sides and the town lines and the differences, like like Town Line Drive. In other words, thank you. Yes.